Uh, hey, there we go. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the November 21st HamSCIence Zoom Telecon. This time of year, it's always a little bit hit and miss with all the holidays, and a lot of us have been traveling and stuff in between. So we'll have our meeting today, again on December 5th, and we'll see what happens on December 19th. We may get together on the 19th, yet to be determined. So keep an eye on the HamSci listserv, and we'll get our meeting announcements out. Today, I just wanted to go over a couple of details about Whisper, the weak signal propagation reporting software and tools. Just because it's one of those things we always talk about using Whisper data, and there's certainly a tremendous amount of it out there. Many of you have heard presentations here and elsewhere in HamSci using Whisper data, and I realize that maybe some people haven't actually operated the mode or never seen anybody operating it. So there's just a couple of websites I like to visit. I've got Whisper running on my other computer. We'll take a quick look at it, and hopefully 10 or 15 minutes we'll get through it. Unless people have other questions or want to add things too. I'm sure a lot of you know as much or more about it than I do. But I just thought that'd be a reasonable thing to cover today. Is there anything else that anybody would like to add in the agenda? Anything burning topics or things they want to discuss before we get started on Whisper?
I have something for later.
Okay. Well, I'll put down an MLW for later. Gotcha. All right, great. Okay, let me get into the Whisper. Let me get into a couple of topics. Then I will share my other desktop because that way I can see what I'm doing on this computer and not make too much of a fool of myself. Share screen. There we go. The first thing I want to mention, I think most of you know about it, but just for the sake of the recording, in case maybe people from outside of Hampshire are watching this later on, it's been a glorious quarter. The very first issue of the HamSci newsletter has been published. And we have right here on the call today, I guess our publisher, Ed, WX2R, who deserves a tremendous amount of credit for pushing this idea forward. I ran into my notes from this call about a year ago. And when Ed was discussing, he says, we ought to put in a newsletter and do this, this, and this. And it has happened. Obviously, if you read through the newsletter, you'll see that Mary Lou and Ron helped contribute a lot of the content. Nathaniel did as well. And we've got a couple of profiles of the people who are on this call frequently. So if you haven't seen it, you can go to the HamSci home webpage, and it should be easy to locate right there in the top of the webpage. So kudos to all those who had something to do with this, because and now they're getting ready to start on the next one. So there's no rest, no rest between volumes. Ed or Mary Lou, is there anything you guys want to say?
Well, thanks to everybody who made a contribution, and it's Mary Lou and I know it's publishing, so it's on to number 2. So as soon as it's a quarterly, so we'll be looking into early 2025. So anyway, and thanks to everybody for your support.
So I wanted to say 2 things. I really wanted to thank Ron Wilcox for his article. I thought that was wonderful, the historical thing. That was really cool. I hope you can find another historical thing or something to do for the next one. And the other thing is that we provided a lot of typed copy and a few pictures, and then the people in the graphics department at Scranton University did a fantastic job and put purple everywhere and all sorts of wonderful things. I mean, they did all this fancy surrounding the words with visual images, which was really, really cool. So Vicky and
graphic
Colleen
designer always improves
did
it.
that.
So, yep.
Yeah, they were wonderful.
Yeah, it's a first class publication. I can tell you, Nathaniel, Gareth Perry and I were at the NASA Citizen Science Conference last week, and when Nathaniel rolled in with these on Wednesday, he was passing them out left and right, and a lot of people came back with compliments after they'd had a chance to look at it. So I think our distribution is going far and wide, so that's a good thing.
Did anybody else have printed materials like this at that conference?
Some of the groups did, but it was more just explanatory nature of what their groups did. Nothing that was a newsy type piece
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, collateral material, that type of thing. So, yeah.
There you go.
Yep. Mhm.
So a lot of stickers too. If you wanted stickers, if I had grandkids or something, I could have collected and traded them for whatever. So all right, that was number one on my list. Number two, Ed pointed this out to me, and in case folks haven't seen it, I'll post this in the follow-up. Well-known friend of HamSCI, Dr. Pat Rife, had a very nice interview on the QRZ.com site a couple of weeks ago. And it's up there now. I see it's from November 11th. So I'll post the links on the wrap up to this meeting, and you can go learn a little bit about Pat and some of her passions for teaching students, college students, amateur radio. So we gotta love that. Good for Pat. Let's see, next thing. Also, we sometimes tend to get a little bit of blinders on and forget about how many other organizations are out there thinking about space physics and whatnot. And just today, this group, the whole Heliosphere and Planetary Interactions group from NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research out in Boulder, had a mini workshop regarding the eclipse. And Kuldeep was one of the speakers. At least it was morning time out there in the mountain time zone. So Kuldeep, did you get a chance to give your talk, and how did it go today?
Yeah, it went well. So I presented our HamSci work and one more work, combined both of them. It was good. Mostly dominated by solar physics group, and two talks on low atmosphere gravity waves on the clouds, and 1 hours. It was
Oh,
good.
great. So it's nice when these other organizations come to HamSCI and ask us to provide material. I mean, that shows, as we do others too, but I mean, it shows how the organizations respect one another's accomplishments and the potential to work together. So that was a nice thing to see. All right. Let me get rid of Pat. We'll get rid of the newsletter. Don't need this. So if I want to take a couple minutes, like I said, and talk about Whisper, Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. I don't want to go into a tremendous amount of detail because there's just so much information out there in the web. You really don't need to hear it from me, but I'll just give you a couple of thoughts and clues where to get started. I mean, one place obviously to get started is Wikipedia. Of course, you always have to take Wikipedia with a grain of salt. It is open source, and while many of the people are very succinct, they're very accurate in their descriptions of how things work. Others are maybe sometimes a little bit off the mark. But this has been, I thought, was a pretty good description of a weak signal propagation reporter on Wikipedia. A few details about the protocol and whatnot. Not super technical, but enough to give you a pretty good flavor about Wikipedia, how it's used and where it's used and whatnot. So that's a good place to start. Let's see. I think something a little more interesting is to look at some of these weak signal propagation reporter signals. Look at some of the graphics rather than looking at a bunch of text in Wikipedia. So let me fold this up. There we go. So this is a typical map from whispernet.org. And this is where stations, and there's thousands of them, will upload their Whisper reception reports and also their transmitting information. This is kind of relevant to me lately because I've been listening and reading you all talk about Whisper for a long time, and I thought maybe I should get involved. So just yesterday, I got a 10-meter dipole put up my attic and started transmitting Whisper from my home station. So behind Dave Kasdan's call sign is me. And aside from the graphics of being able to see where my signals are coming and going from, you can get a textual representation of all the stations who have heard me. And let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. And stations that I've heard as well. So I see stations that I am hearing everywhere from Jersey in the UK. We've got a lot of people in the US, PT, Brazil, France, more Europeans over in the UK, We've got Belgium and whatnot, the Netherlands, and stations who heard my signal were the same thing. Across the US, we've got KFS and KPH out in Port Reyes on the West Coast. The Rob Robinette's involved with, again, the same smattering of Europeans, Belgium, the Germans, South ZF in the Caribbean, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this, and we'll look at a couple of different maps. Let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. But that's where my 10-meter signal has been traveling to the last couple of days. So now the thing that's interesting about Whisper is it's a very it's a mode that's it's able to recover very, very, very small signals within the noise. So my current transmitting situation is about 1.5 watts in the 75 feet of rather old, probably very lossy feed line, and into a dipole that's at about 20 feet. So by the time my signal gets to my actual dipole, it's probably less than a watt of transmitting signal power, but yet I'm being received over 3 or 4 different continents. So we got a reception report in Madagascar too, and then Australia. So quite a bit of the world is able to hear a little 1 watt whisper signal. It's kind of amazing stuff. And you've seen some of the stuff that Gwen and others have been able to do and tease out of the data. And Kuldeep is working with millions of whisper spots from the eclipse events and so on and so forth. So this data is just from one very small station who's only been on the air for the last 24 hours. And Whisper has been going strong since 2010. So the data set is quite extensive.
So Gary, how long is the time period for all these little things on the map? Is that 24 hours?
Let's take a look. That's a great question. So the search I've got going is only the 10-meter band, my call sign, over the last 24 hours. So let's look at the last hour, for instance. We can hit update, and we're still doing pretty well. So from a propagation perspective now, you can see in the last hour, I've pretty much lost most of Europe, where it's dark. And all my reception and transmission reports are now in the Western US for the most part.
You go all the way to Hawaii?
Let's see. Oh, I'm missing not Hawaii at the moment,
Wow.
but we do have one in Australia. So, and then we can, there's another call sign that I don't think Rob Robinette's with it, but Rob worked with a gentleman to get a station way up north in Canada, VY0ERC. Let's see what we see from up there. Nothing reported. Let's go a little bit further back. There we go. So this is kind of cool. Look where this station is at. He's at 80 degrees latitude. He's way up there northwest of Baffin Bay, I think that is. So kudos to Rob to get a whisper demon set up there, so we can get an idea from well above the Arctic Circle, which is what, about 66 degrees. These guys are at 80, so they're getting pretty close to the pole and well within the auroral zone. So I think, who knows, we may get some interesting data from those guys. They're definitely receiving a lot of signals from the US.
Gary, is this all 10 meters or are there other channels and other frequencies in there as well?
This is all 10 meters I'm looking at right now, Nick. Let's open it up to all bands. I'm not sure what VY0ERC is set up to receive. If I do an update, yeah, look at that. Look what else is coming in there. Definitely a lot more signals. So yeah, there must be other bands involved, Nick. You're right. So you can easily see how the data set multiplies rather quickly when we've got this many reports even for a single station.
There's a station that's marked in Alaska, but it doesn't have a line to it, just the words. Where did line?
There is a real faint green line here. So
Oh.
this station was a transmitting station, and he was heard by the guy up north.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a real faint line there. See, there's another station in what used to be known as Yukon or the Northwest Territories. I think they've since renamed it. Nick, you might remember, you might know better than me, but up in northern Canada. And TI4JWC down there in Costa Rica is a very fervent whisper enthusiast as well.
So you said that your station is 1.5 watts. What sort of power are the really strong ones? All the way up to 5 or what?
In a second, we're going to look at a different database, and we can actually select the stations by their output power. So maybe we'll be able to figure that out. It's a good
Okay,
question.
thank you.
So this WhisperNet is I guess what you call the aggregation site. Gwen, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like most of the stations report into whispernet.org, and then some of the other sites we're going to see will extract their data from here, which is currently kind of problematic. We'll see a little warning message pop up in a few minutes. But this has been around for quite a while. All right. Let's see where else we wanted to go. I think we can see much better here at Whisper Rocks. Note that the Whisper Rocks website, which we're going to look at now, has been kind of cut off from extracting data from the first site I showed you, whispernet.org. And I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But for instance, my reports for the last 24 hours don't show up because there's been a problem with the application programming interface between the two systems. I know Rob mentioned that this morning a little bit, that it's going to be a challenge to get this problem fixed, and we've had this problem before, I understand, and kind of needs a long-term solution. So I'm sure people will be working on that. This site has a little bit nicer map, I would say, and some very nice search capabilities. So I can look at the last 1,000 spots in the last hour. I'm just going to pick 10 meters for myself. Reception call. Let's see if I put my own call sign in there. Oops. Got to get the right keyboard. And nothing found. Okay, let's go back. Oh, that's right, because I said they've had a problem with the interface. So you're not going to find anything with me. So let's.
Okay. Gary?
Yes.
You will be able to see all of your spots reported by Whisper Demon spotters. So if you click on the 3 horizontal lines just to the right of home, and then go down to database, where your cursor is, select Whisper Demon as the fallback, and then close that, and close that dialog box, and then search again. Oh,
Yeah, let's try a different. I
sorry,
think
are you receiving or transmitting?
I'm doing both.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't know why that is then.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with David as well. Let's try this again. never fails when you do a demo. Things are always bound to glitch out. I found from David either. Let's stretch out our time period a little bit. Okay. So this is a station that's also in Cleveland, David Kasdan from Case Western Reserve. Many of you know him. And this is David's reports on 10 meters over the last few weeks. So he is we can get some information on the people that are receiving him, or he's being receiving from. Excuse me for that. So here, Mary Lou, is our option to change our power levels.
Okay.
So we can go to the very low power spots, and that keeps resetting back to that spot. This is showing all. Oh, this is a dynamic zoom. Oh, this is a dynamic slider. There we go. So as I reduce the power that I'm searching for, you can see a few lines are dropping out here. Let me zoom in a little bit to the Cleveland area. There we go. That's dynamic. So if I go all spots, regardless of power level, and as I slide to the right, I'm reducing the power level of the stations in the database. So that's less than 100 milliwatts. And David is still receiving these very, very low power stations. Now, of course, these power level settings depend on the transmitting station setting up their own metadata correctly. So, this is not a measured value or a confirmed value. We're depending on the transmitting stations to do the right thing. So, like any data set, you have to take it with a little bit of care. But so that's, yeah, David receiving all those stations there. So that's a little bit different way of viewing the data, and I thought that was this is a very, very, very nice site, obviously. And there's far, far more capability than I've explored and would have time to show here. But there's a lot going on in this site, I can tell you. Let's see. Let's take a look at VY0ERC again, since he was interested earlier. So if we look at the lower power stations, usually say a watt or less, he is still hearing quite a few of those stations from literally all over the world. So I guess my takeaway from this mode is I knew it was impressive. When you start looking at the data a little bit, it becomes even more so.
So Gary, are these all one hop transmissions, or are some of them two hops?
I don't know that I could tell from what we see on the screen. I mean, it's kind of a binary thing. There's a reception report or not. Gwen would probably be better to comment on that than I would if you could, Gwen.
Muted.
Sorry. With Whisper itself, a radio amateur from New Jersey, Ryan Tolboom, figured out how to get the Whisper decoder modified to measure spectral spread. And by doing that, then one hop has a lower spectral spread than 2-hop or 3-hop and so on. So it can be done, but it was never envisaged that Whisper should be able to do that. And so it demands a lot of quality control on the measurements and the interpretation of the spread from Whisper. So it's not easy to do, Mary Lou.
How
It's
about after a
possible.
certain large distance, then it becomes 2, or can you even say that?
Well, it depends on the frequency. So you may have 2,500 kilometers might be 1 hop on 21, 24 megahertz. But it's possible it might be 3 hops on 7 megahertz.
This is 10 megahertz.
10 meters, 28
10
megahertz.
meters, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 28 megahertz.
These are probably only 1 hop. Huh. Well,
I think we'll take a look in a minute. Ryan's paper on his algorithm for making that calculation is here on the site. There's a lot of technical information here as well. Let's see. So if I go, let's see. I can find my way back to the home page here. There's a different site I'm thinking about. We get to Rob's site. The Rob site on Whisper Daemon, which is another client for doing the Whisper decoding and uploading of the data, has an extensive presentations tab. You'll see many of Gwen's papers and presentations there, from Rob as well. There's some from Nathaniel, and I think Ryan's is here. I saw it earlier today. Could be wrong about that, but I believe it was here. I'll find it and link it in the after meeting notes. But just to look at the actual, if somebody's never seen Whisper actually running, this is one piece of software that will, and I'm actually running Whisper here at home. So the top is, of course, a waterfall plot with our times in UTC, showing that I am decoding some signals. You can see in the audio passband a few signals. And let's get this out of the way. Whisper is decoded over a 2-minute period. It's a very low bandwidth, very low, very slow protocol. But as this blue line moves here across the 2-minute period, the decoding will appear about the last 6 seconds. And then the signals that we're seeing here will pop onto the screen with frequency, call sign, their grid square, and then an indication of their transmitting power. This is dBm, if I remember. Let's see. So it's about to flash decode on the screen at the bottom. There's the decode in blue. And a few more call signs popped in. So these are the call signs. This is the information that's being sent to whispernet.org and eventually makes it to Whisper Rocks and a couple of the other aggregation sites. So this is one way to run a Whisper from a software perspective. In doing so, this takes up a good chunk of my ham station. One of my transceivers, power supplies, and other ancillary equipment and stuff. So from an equipment point of view, it's not all that equipment efficient. But what I'm thinking about doing next is going to QRP Labs and buy one of these little guys. It's called an Ultimate QRSS. And this little guy, I'll get some better pictures here. That's the back, not so interesting, but there it is. It's basically 2 circuit boards and a set of filters in a box. And this is a standalone Whisper transmitter. It will run probably up to a watt or 2, depending on how you configure the final amplifier and what voltage you run on it and so on and so forth. But this is nice in that it's a self-contained unit. You don't need a Raspberry Pi. You don't need a laptop. You don't need a keyboard. All the settings are done through the menu buttons and the edit buttons, and all the user interface is on the screen right here.
Hey,
So
Gary.
this is a rather slick piece of equipment.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah.
What was the path to that again, please? Where did you find that on the?
Yeah, it's QRP hyphen labs, LABS.com.
Thank you.
Sure.
What are you using to control yours, Gary? Are you using a Raspberry Pi or something?
No, actually, it's my Mac Mini. My desktop is running it right now.
Oh, okay.
Just because it was convenient. I started out on 6 meters a couple weeks ago, and then looking at the spot counts and stuff, obviously they're pretty low because 6 meters doesn't open up all that often. And though I was transmitting for days at a time, I wasn't getting any reports, so it wasn't all that interesting to me. So I saw that 10 meters has been open a lot, and that's why I changed band.
Hey, Gary, this is Ed. I wondered, you made a comment about doing Doppler on this. Do they have enough frequency stability, or are they using a GPSDO at either end, and what's going on with that right now? Thanks.
Yeah, there is another mode that's similar called FST4W, and I believe that mode is much easier, much more likely to be controlled and GPS disciplined. And there's a lot more information that can be extracted out of that particular mode. Gwen, I may have to turn to you for a little bit of help and advice on the GPS discipline question from Ed.
Ed, yes, the Ultimate 3 comes with a GPS aided oscillator, which provides a correction from the 1 pulse per second output of a GPS receiver at the end of a cycle of Whisper. And so it is not phase locked, such as a GPS disciplined oscillator from Leo Bodnar and others would be. So it's GPS aided. It keeps the long-term frequency pretty accurate, but it doesn't follow it in the short term.
Okay, thanks.
So that's me personally. This is where I'm thinking about heading, because I like building things, for one, and for two, I can dedicate this pretty easily, set it on a shelf above my grate, and kind of let it go, and then get my ham equipment back and my desktop back. So that's the option there.
Is it expensive?
No, actually, quite the opposite. Let's go back a step here. The kit itself from the UK, only $33. You add the case to it for 22. The GPS aided option that Gwen was talking about is in the same ballpark. So literally for about $100, you can put yourself on the air with a pretty nice little Whisper setup.
Gary, if I may, this is Bill, KTE.
Sure, Bill.
What I have used, and I've done presentations on this, is a pair of Zac Tech Whisper transmitters from Sweden. These are really handy. If you get a pair of them, you can compare your current antenna with the latest one that you put up and see how the two compare signal strength wise. It's a self-contained transmitter, not a kit, come pre-built with a GPS receiver in it. And the primary purpose of the GPS is about timing, because these long duration, low data rate systems require very accurate timing, a little bit more accurate than FT8, but you've got to be within a couple seconds, 1 second preferably. So the whisper transmitters, long transmissions, low data rate, and you can buy one of these from Sweden for $139 and less than $20 shipping. They're very compact. You configure it with a computer to set up, and it will rotate among the bands. You can choose from down to the VLF range up through 6 meters. There are two different models. And what's cool is if you have a multi-band antenna, and like you point out, just about any piece of wire will work, you can have it rotate among the bands. And there's a specific schedule that's standard throughout the whisper community. So you start off, let's say, on 80 meters, go up to 40, skip 60, go to 30, and on up through 10 or 6 meters. Really, really handy. Wonderful for collecting data about your antennas and propagation. I brought a pair of them with me to Lubbock to use ahead of the contest this past weekend, but I had too many things to do in my friend's shack to get ready, didn't have time. But for us contesters, if you want to find out what the bands are doing, you put one of these transmitters or more on whatever antennas you have, and you'll know where you need to be and when you need to be there.
Hey, Gary,
Yeah, Ron, sure.
I'm wondering if it would be possible, if there's others here, that to maybe like email to you if they're using different whispers, so that those of us that are looking at this might have some different ideas and hardware to compare and check out, so that when we do make the decision, we've seen what options there are. I don't know if there's that many more options, but I would be very interested to see what others might be using and why. I don't know, maybe they could send you an email or something.
No, that'd be fine. I've been trying to do some follow-ups on our various calls, and if some of that information came in, I would just put it on the HamSCI Google group under today's Telecon and add the links to it and a little bit of and any story that needs to go with it. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah, it's a nice thing about ham radio. We have options, right? And what works for one person may not work for somebody else, but at least you have to be aware of it. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, just a little bit of awareness. I think that's all I had for today. Let's see. Oh, no, how could I forget? There's 2 other things. So this is what a lot of people use. This is what I'm using in my current station. This is basically just a sound card interface. Takes the audio from my ham radio transceiver and digitizes it into a USB compatible signal and sends it to my Macintosh, and vice versa. The Mac will generate over USB the transmitted signal, and this will convert it to audio, and then it's inputted into the ham transceiver to get transmitted. So this is another option. These are about $100, but it's just one part of an integrated station. The other thing I did want to mention, if you're really interested in really helping the world a lot, there's one of these. These are fantastic. Paul Elliott, WB6CXC, in the far northwest of the U.S. has been building these whisper signs, and you can transmit. This will also generate signals over 8 bands and rotate through them. And he and of course Rob Robinette and a few others have been deploying these around the U.S. and have plans for deploying them around the world. And I know there's one operating at WWV right now for sure. They can literally go from 160 to 6 meters transmitting whisper signals and all those bands on a rotating basis. And then as all the hundreds or literally thousands of whisper receiving stations you saw on the map can pick up all those bands, we can generate a tremendous amount of propagation data in a very short time. So Paul did, he was demonstrating this at the Dayton Hamvention last year. It was at the Tapper table next to us at HamSCI, and it was fantastic. But this is kind of the ultimate piece of whisper hardware. There's no question about it. It's a beautiful design, and the construction and whatnot is really something.
Gary, if I may, I think you said rotating between the bands. Is that right?
Well, maybe that's my assumption. I may not be correct in that.
No, it's either 6 bands or 8 bands simultaneously in parallel.
Okay, so it's different from the Zactec in that respect. I see.
Correct. Yes, and it's really up to the user's ingenuity to arrange to have suitable antennas to make full use of those 8 bands. So it can be from 160 to 6 meters.
Okay, that explains a lot because so one option would be to have, of course, 8 different antennas. The other option is Paul has another product called a 9-band filter combiner. You could have the transmitter outputs from the various bands. This will combine them all and send them to a single antenna if you have a multi-band antenna. So it combines inputs from 80 through 6 meters and puts them out to a single antenna. So, okay, that explains this a little better. So again, Turn Island Systems, that's for the truly serious whisper enthusiast. So that's really something. I think I'm done with that computer. So that's what I had to present today. Like I said, I wanted to raise the awareness of, and I think Ron, you had a good idea. We collect some of the information that I've presented, some information that Bill and others may yet send me, and get it out there, and then people can make a decision on how they may or may not want to participate. It's a very good idea. Any other comments or questions on the whisper area? I've only, of course, scratched the surface, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of flavor to get started if this is something new to you. All right, good. Okay, any comments, questions for the group in general, and any other HamSCI topics at the moment? All right, I guess we're good.
I'll throw something out really quick. I'll make it quick. So I did a presentation to a California club, and I really thought that the word was out about HamSCI. And I started the meeting off. I always have the beginning of my presentation is a few minutes about HamSCI, and then I get into the sun and the ionosphere. And the gentleman introducing me, the president of this club, said Ron is associated with the HamSCI. And then somebody else in the group said, what is HamSCI? And then a couple of Zoom people came in. I finally said, okay, stop with the bio and the introduction. And we got to talk here for a second, folks. It's HamSCI, not HamSCI. And I said, obviously, this club has not heard about it. I said, go ahead and finish the bio, and then we're going to learn about what HamSCI is. And I almost spelled it because I'd heard them do it so many times. But it was just interesting because I thought our name was like everywhere now. And this whole group and about 30 or 40 members of the club, none of them had heard of it. So we still have some work to do in publicity. But anyway, I was just kind of laughing and trying not to laugh where they would see me last night as each person spelled it. So.
Send them a newsletter, Ron.
Yeah, you know what? That's not a bad idea, Ed. Not a bad idea to send it to the president. All right, I'll quit taking up bandwidth.
No, that's a relevant topic because Ed and I were talking a few days ago, and Ed says we should start getting on our presentation schedule together for clubs next year, right, Ed? Is that what
Yep.
you were thinking?
Yep. So yeah, if you got a club, get us on the calendar. So yeah,
I
'cause we
mean,
do some
a
marketing.
couple of things we could talk about is introducing the HamSCI, some of the observations from Cool Deep and other regarding the eclipse and whatnot. But also we've got this grant to deploy 25 or 30 more of the rather sophisticated personal space weather stations. And we want to get that out there so some people who may be interested in hosting those stations would participate. In fact, Doug, who's on the call here, is suggesting that we HamSCI participate in the Rocky Mountain National Convention next October, which would be a good thing because you can, of course, because due to the population, the middle and the northern plains is a little less represented than we would like by some of our personal space weather stations. So the Rocky Mountain Convention may be a place to get the word out in person. So
Yeah,
Gary,
oops, sorry. Yep.
I'm sorry. We did it this year at the Rocky Mountain Convention. I did a presentation on HamSCI, the eclipse, and the sun and the ionosphere. And it was well attended. There was about, I think there was like 180 people. They set up chairs. They had standing room in the back, and then they turned people away. A lot of questions about it. So the Rocky Mountain Convention this year was represented, and I had information available. In fact, you sent me some information. It was you or Ed that I was handing out as well. So we started that already this year with the RMCM. I just wasn't sure if you're aware, but
yeah, but Gary, just I don't want to belabor because I know we're tight on time, but yeah, I think Ron, it raises a good point because don't forget, I mean, a lot of the work of the last year, was really in terms of getting participation, in terms of in terms of getting hams on the air regarding the eclipses. So obviously our positioning and our messaging, needs to be a bit different, and that's one of the reasons why we looked at a newsletter. And also in terms of maybe some other operating type events, that sort of keeps the mission of HamSCI, relevant. And also keeps us sort of front of mind for a lot of hams. So obviously it's not every ham will connect with it. Okay, but obviously there's a segment that's really attuned to looking at space weather and ionospheric science that I think really has some play, and that's really where I think we're going to go with this.
and it's not just ham radio, but Mary Lou got me started on astronomy clubs.
Yep.
And I have another astronomy club first week of January that I'm doing, and I have been pleased and a little surprised at how much interest there has been in astronomy clubs in the presentation and some of that. So, but again, we're tight on time, so I'll quit.
Yeah.
So please feel free to give me an email if you're interested in participating at Rocky Mountain Ham Convention. I'm involved in the planning for it, and I'd love to get a forum together on HamSCI. So give me a email. My QRZ has my email.
Is it in Wyoming this year, Doug?
It's in Grand Junction, Colorado.
So it's in Colorado this year?
Or west of west of Denver in Colorado anyway.
Okay.
October 22nd to 23rd to the 26th, the Sunday.
Hey, Gary, do you know how many? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
No, I was just telling Doug I'll talk to him later.
Okay. Gary, do you have an idea of how many grapes we need sent out still?
Well, the budget I think is probably going to allow for 25 of them next year.
Okay.
These are the more sophisticated stations that have the VLF receiver, the ground magnetometer, and the Whisper Demon RX-888. So they're pretty a little more involved in getting them on the air than the current either Grape 1s or Grape 2s.
Okay. Is there like a list of states that we absolutely need them in?
Well, that's kind of my job for next year. I've wrapped up the Solar Eclipse QSO party and some of the other things I was working on for HamSCI, and I've got to once I get the data uploaded to Zenodo where it needs to go, I'm going to start putting a little bit more of a framework around what Nathaniel and the group wants for next year. So it's, I guess, kind of sort of to be determined.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So Gary, with that grant, is there, for those of us that have Grape 2, is there any chance of adding a whisper in under that grant to the Grape 2?
I don't know. I know the vision was is to get the three pieces of equipment out there. Like I said, VLF, the ground magnetometer, and the HF, which the HF would be both whisper and grape Doppler shift. That's a nice thing about the RX-88 whisper demon systems. They do both. So we can look for correlations between changes in the magnetosphere, the ionosphere, and so on and so forth. So how the money gets spent on the grant is fortunately something I don't have to think about. Nathaniel and Gareth and whoever the PIs and co-PIs are got to think about that. So I guess I would say stay tuned and we'll see what comes of this stuff next year, early next year. All right. Any other comments or questions?
Dave Lewis here.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Hi. Just in terms of getting the word out, it's interesting how it goes in circles and comes back. I have a son, PhD plant physiologist. He's the director of the Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden here in Miami, Florida. And they have a NASA contract to have about 125 schools all growing plants to test for growth in space. So he was at the contractors meeting in Leesburg, Virginia last week, and he stumbled across the HamSCI table and the ARRL people and brought me back a whole bunch of stuff he didn't know that I already had, including the newsletter. And the go-between, who was our grandson, who worked with me a bit during the eclipse, and then also knows what his dad does and is helping him build the growth chambers for all these 125 schools. So it's the tentacles go out and come back in interesting ways. When my son said he had to go to this meeting, I had no idea that this was a meeting at which HamSCI would also be represented in the same cluster of contractors there.
Yeah, there's a couple different groups. I think I forget the name of I probably talked to him actually. I forget the name of the group. It's not called Growing in Space. It's something similar. But yeah, they work on some of those groups. They're part of something called Science Activation. They work on a 5-year grant cycle. So working with that many students and that many schools and stuff, that's probably how he's involved. We're in the citizen science side of things, and we're a little less formal, and our grants are a little more hit and miss. We depend a little more heavily on our volunteers and whatnot. But two very interesting organizations, but that's the whole reason NASA combines our meetings in that week, so we could have a little bit of cross-fertilization. I know, so I mean, it was a good thing to see all those other groups there last week. So,
what kind of plants do they want to grow in space?
Well, they started with very common plants, vegetables, fruits and vegetables, things that grow rapidly. But of course, the growing conditions are much different up in space because the atmosphere is maintained and with different ratios of oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and things. So that they have to see how rapidly things will grow. You have to have a growth chamber in which you can simulate the atmosphere that you're going to have on the space shuttle. And then the space shuttle, of course, does not have normal sunlight filtered through an atmosphere the way we do on land. So they simulate with LEDs across the light spectrum with controllers and vary the light cycle and the wavelength cycle. But with 125 schools working on this, each with its own set, you don't expect that any one school is going to have a very is going to have very accurate measurements of the gross massive growth of a particular plant over 2 weeks or a month or something. But when you get that many all doing the same thing, and you average them, and you see what the spectrum is. Yeah, okay, yep, that's the icon that they use for the program at Fairchild. But with all those schools going, with the averaging, you get some pretty good data. So that NASA's own labs, the schools are corroborating what the NASA labs are getting, or vice versa. But they're able to look at a much broader range of conditions and plants.
As a representative of the state of New Mexico section manager, I'd like to point out that on the ISS, they grew hatch green chili. So much better than the green chili from Colorado. Sorry, Doug.
Oh boy, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, us humans, we're all competitive. Isn't that funny?
Yep.
Even though we're
Still,
cooperative at the same time.
We're still a long way from feeding anybody on the way to Mars and back, but you got to start somewhere. And of course, the other side of this is that there aren't any programs to teach botany in schools. They teach biology, and it's mostly animal biology, and and very relatively few colleges, undergraduate colleges, that have botany programs. Botany was traditionally a woman's science up through 30, 40 years ago. So if you look at women's colleges, they all had strong botany programs, but the men's colleges didn't. So recruitment was a major problem. But this program now has almost all the schools in South Florida involved. And they even have a magnet high school in botany, and are turning out students who are now being recruited by colleges, and even early by graduate programs to try to get more in. Coincidentally, my son was a ham KB2 BSV during his high school years, but he got hooked on computers and just didn't come back to it. But grandson is more interested in this and helping me out with some of the technical things. He's a computer whiz, so he helps me do things that I didn't have the opportunity to keep up with during my professional career. Anyway, to jump in and mention how this cross-fertilization works in spreading the word.
My local elementary school where my kids went is the Science Magnet, and it has a greenhouse, the elementary school.
And where's?
It's in New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Time's up.
I'm just laughing because if I had to feed myself and grow my own plants on the way to Mars, I wouldn't last long. I don't have a green thumb.
So what's it going to be? Potatoes and radishes. There you go.
Wonderful. I eat these energy bars, these Cliff bars. Like they're coming out like there's no tomorrow. So my wife can't stand them, but I love them. So hey, all right. Great, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for helping me out through the presentation. I obviously had some questions and some gaps, and Glenn and others helped me out, and Bill and Ron and whatnot. So thank you very much. But I will definitely spread the word on the Whisper information. If somebody has some Whisper hardware or a preferred method of doing it, definitely let me know, and we'll get it out to the group, and maybe we get some more people on the air, which is part of the fun. So everyone have a great couple of weeks, because next Thursday, remember, is a holiday in the United States. A lot of us will be eating turkey and sleeping and I don't know, watching sports on TV maybe, or picking up a good book. And in my case, my wife and I, it can be her and I and my cat. So we're looking for a quiet day next Thursday. So everyone have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you back on the 5th. And I think we'll have a little more science on the 5th, another speaker. So long, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.